Viewed today while driving by on West Main Street in Ottawa, the small ravine between Sugar Street and the Blanchard River appears to be just an empty lowland. But back in the day, it was part of Ottawa's West End, the summer amusement center of town. The West End skating rink opened in 1930, and on June 19th, the American Legion sponsored a Japanese garden dance. The rink, which was large enough to accommodate 300 couples, was decorated with lanterns and Japanese ornaments for the occasion. The skating rink was located on the south side of West Main Street. Beutler's gas station was built in the same vicinity around 1934. Local residents remember medicine shows taking place in the same area in the 1920s. Just west of the skating rink was the famous Roundhouse. Built around the year 1890, the Roundhouse had a dance pavilion and bar. Some say ladies of questionable social standing were seen there. Later, the Roundhouse served as living quarters, but by 1930 it stood vacant. The most legendary and historic events took place on a pasture owned by then Ottawa Mayor William A. Beutler. A former telegraph operator for the B&O Railroad, Beutler was elected mayor in 1920. He was an excellent organizer and entrepreneur, operating a hay and straw business in 1930 and later a gas station and tourist camp. Beutler would later die in 1937 after contracting ptomaine poisoning. Located on the northwest corner of West Main and Sugar Street, this cow pasture was known to the locals as Beutler Field. It was here that the great American game of baseball was played. A covered grandstand stood behind home plate at the northwest corner of the field. A dugout and bleachers stood along each baseline. The infield was bare ground, and there was patchy grass in the outfield area. Baseball has long been called a pastoral game, and at Beutler Field, literal cow patties had to be picked up before each game. Claire Shorty Kreinbrink was a young boy in 1930 who lived just east of the Beutler farm. Often Shorty would come to the field early in the morning carrying a small bucket. He would gather the freshest cow patties and then deliver them to his grandmother, who believed that packing these on her knees would relieve her arthritis. On Sunday mornings, Mayor Beutler and his young son Carl would prepare the field for play by putting up canvas on the fence that surrounded the field. The big games were attended by hundreds of fans. Cars would be parked all around the area. Some cars would cruise back and forth on Main Street, checking things out. The air was filled with the aroma of popcorn, peanuts, and cigars. On occasion, a local band would provide music which added to a carnival-like atmosphere of fun and anticipation. Everyone was there to have a good time. The entire scene, typical of America in the 1930s, was like a Norman Rockwell painting brought to life. In the era of 1929 to 1930, Beutler Field was home to many local teams. Among them were the Kiwanis Huskies, the Ottawa Cubs, and St. Peter and Paul High School. The most popular and legendary team was the Liberty Sluggers, an amateur team composed mainly of farm boys from the New Cleveland area. On May 29, 1929, the Liberty Sluggers participated in two of the most memorable and historic games ever played at Beutler Field. The American Athletic Girls was a professional team which barnstormed the country, playing town teams. They would play two games against the Sluggers, one at 2:30 in the afternoon and the second at 8:30 in the evening. In the first game, the Sluggers lived up to their nickname, backing up the 4-hit pitching of their crafty ace, Alva Lefty Winkler, with 11 hits and 8 runs. The Sluggers won 8-0. In the second game, the American Athletic girls set up their $20,000 electric light plan, replete with 50,000 candle power. This would illuminate Beutler Field and give Putnam County its first glimpse of night baseball. The girls won the second game by a score of 6-2. Night baseball had come to Putnam County. The first night game in the major leagues would not be played until May 24, 1935 at Crosley Field in Cincinnati. Beutler Field would again make history in the summer of 1930 when it would serve as the home field for the first Ottawa American Legion baseball team. In the spring of 1930, it was announced that the American Legion posts in Putnam County would sponsor a junior baseball league. The league would consist of Gilboa, Columbus Grove, Leipsic, Continental, and Ottawa. Tryouts for the Ottawa squad, nicknamed the Tigers, were held in May at Beutler Field. All local boys aged 10 to 17 years old were invited to try out. 35-year-old Sheriff Clinton L. Red Felke, a small but very determined man, would coach the new team. Felke, who did not own an automobile, traveled the county on foot during his campaign for sheriff. He would be assisted by John Klein, a former pharmacist who was now a chemist and a clerk at the Ohio Sugar Company. These two men would lead the Ottawa Legion baseball team in their inaugural season. Having been organized in 1919, the local Legion post was only 11 years old in 1930, with a total membership of 49. Sponsoring a Legion baseball team during the Great Depression would not be easy. Behind the scenes, a core group of men were instrumental in the organization of the first team. These men included the commander of Post 63, Norman Depker, and Dr. Burton McCroba. Members of the 1930 team included Paul Weaver, Bill Labe, Doug Rook, Eddie Seifer, Woody Little, Jim Brustcutter, John Labadie, Jude Westrick, Cliff Crawford, Carpenter, Wortcutter, Arntz, Wallace, and Larry Dunn. Larry Dunn was a 16-year-old pitcher for Ottawa. In fact, he was the only pitcher. He was not overpowering, relying instead on control, junk pitches, and the savvy of his catcher, Paul Weaver. On Friday, July 4, 1930, the new Ottawa Legion team would be part of a huge Independence Day celebration in Ottawa. Beutler Field would again be the epicenter of events, which were organized by American Legion Post 63 and the Ottawa businessmen. Thousands of people converged on Ottawa for the celebration, which included 3 baseball games, greased pig and greased pole climbing contests, and music from the Kaleida Band. In the opening contest, the Lima Crescents defeated the Liberty Sluggers by a score of 6-1. In the second game, the spotlight turned to Sheriff Felke and his Ottawa Legion Tigers. The boys rose to the occasion, defeating a team of young Glandorf players 6-0. The third and final clash at 6 p.m. that evening would see the Fat versus the Lean square off. The Lean team outlasted the Fat by a score of 17-7. The battle thrilled the huge crowd and prompted the Putnam County Sentinel to quip, "Had the game gone much further, we have our doubts as to whether either team would have survived." Finally, as darkness approached, the fireworks show began. $350 had been spent on the newest designs and displays. The launch area was Beutler Bottom, which was just west of the ball field on the banks of the Blanchard River. Columbus Grove won the Putnam County Junior League in 1930, posting a 7-1 record. Ottawa finished second at 6-2. Both Columbus Grove and Ottawa then advanced to compete in the 10-county district tournament. Though it was held at Beutler Field, neither local team prevailed. The Ottawa team was honored at the August meeting of the American Legion Post 63, which was held at the Village Town Hall. Sheriff Felke, the team skipper, addressed the gathering and congratulated the boys on their success and good behavior. The membership thanked Felke for the capable manner in which he led the Ottawa lads. A fine tradition was established that would carry into the next 8 decades. Beutler Field would continue to be a center of activity throughout the 1930s, 40s, and early 50s. Many other events occurred there which could have been highlighted. Football was played in the outfield area during autumn. During visits to Ottawa, Beutler Field would also play host to the circus that came to town. Today, however, Beutler Field exists only as a pleasant memory. The covered grandstand and bleachers are long gone. Years of flooding by the Blanchard River have erased any trace of the field where young and old played that great American pastime. Today, Ottawa Legion baseball is the last remaining vestige of the cow pasture called Beutler Field.
By the shores of old Lake Michigan, where the hawk wind blows so cold, an old Cub fan lay dying in his midnight hour that tolled. All around his bed his friends had gathered. They knew his time was short, and up on his head they put a bright blue cap from his all-time favorite sport. And he said, "It's late, it's getting dark in here, and I know it's time to go. But before I leave the lineup, there's just one thing I'd like to know. Do they still play the blues in Chicago when baseball season rolls around? When the snow melts away, do the Cubbies still play in their ivy-covered burial ground? When I was a boy, they were my pride and joy, but now they only bring fatigue to the home of the brave, the land of the free, and the doormat of the National League." Gosh, it's the one I like the best. He closed his eyes and he slipped away. Well, Mike, it was the dying Cub fans' last request, so here it is. Do they still play the blues in Chicago when baseball season rolls around? When the snow melts away, do the Cubbies still play in their ivy-covered burial ground? When I was a boy, they were my pride and joy. Now they only bring fatigue to the home of the brave, the land of the